then. So, today, the plan is, oh, you're recording. The plan today is to look into the assignment, and I will briefly explain what we are expecting from you. And then we'll open it to the floor. So you ask questions, Michelle and I give answers, and ideally, if some of you have already done some work, at the end of the session you can show it up on the screen and we can look into that. So a bit of background. What we are asking from you is to produce a document that looks into the aspects of risk and value management for a project. So this project will have to be inspired by one of the World Bank projects. So if you go on World Bank, on the World Bank website, there is a database there with all the projects that they've funded in the past few years. And for each of them there are plenty of documents that describe what number of things, from the funding structure to the stakeholders analysis, to the work packages that were delivered during the project, and so on and so forth. Very frequently you also find a risk assessment document, and sometimes there is a value document, something that describes what are the benefits intended and how they are going to be realized. Now, of course, we are not asking you to provide us an analytical report on that work, because that work has been done already. What we're asking you is to think of that project as a bit of previous experience that somebody produced in the past, and on the foundations provided by them, to consider what would be the best behavior of a project manager to provide a document and a structure to make a beautiful new project out of that experience. Okay? So, this report is a professional report in that sense, in the sense that it is what you would do if you were a professional project manager that was faced with the challenge of running a new project next year, with the experience that you can get from the World Bank database. Of course, though, this is also an academic report. It's a report where you actually, if you step back a second, what we need from you to do is to demonstrate that you have learned some lessons from us, that you are now familiar with some of the topics of risk and value, that you know the theories that we use when we decide what is the best value strategy for a project, what can we do to make the management of risks of project run without any problems. So it's a matter of using those theories that we've covered, tailoring them to the specific project, and producing a report that covers those aspects. Both of those aspects. So there are going to be some decisions that you make.
Sorry.
It's alright. It's okay. Oh, well.
Yeah.
It's not.
I'll have to. Was I still there? I was still there. Still centered. It's okay.
I need to be at the center. So, the idea I followed. I lost my plot, of course. The idea is.
Decisions that you make.
Yes. You'll be making decisions on the project. You have to justify them academically. Sometimes in a professional report you would not do that. You would not justify the reason for you to make a choice. So this would not be exactly a professional report. It's a professional report with a bit of salt more, some more juice. Okay? That's what we're expecting. In terms of structure, you're free to use whatever structure you like. So you don't have to cover the topics in the order that we asked. So we asked for 4 sections, A, B, C, D. A being a general introduction to the project. all the information that you think is useful for us to understand what the project is about and for you to analyze the project. Section B is on the value portion, I think. Section B is on how do you capture the benefits of the project in general, and how you make sure that you have them accurately identified. Section D is on risk. So once you know what the project is, the value is, what can go wrong. And there are two ways to look into that. One is to start from the stakeholders, one is to look at the more generic risk profile. The last section we haven't covered yet in the lectures is on governance. So that will be on decision making or governance. There are two options for that section. Governance would be the dynamics that you set in place for your project. So what happens when something happens? Who gets to make a decision? I'll give you the floor in a second. So who gets to make a decision? When they make a decision, does that decision need to be supported by somebody else? Once they make the decision, who have to give that information to so that everything flows smoothly? So governance is about making sure that the process of the project is controlled, okay, with authority. The opposite, the flip side of authority would be efficiency, because in general very authoritative processes are slow to react. So somebody takes their time to make a decision, and then time is passed between that moment and information, and when the information is actually transferred to the people that need to act on those decisions. So you have to make a process that is not only authoritative, but it's also efficient. So it's a difficult balance to strike very frequently. So these four sections are potentially distinct. It's clear what needs to be in one of them. However, what we care about is for them to be integrated. What we are interested in is for you to pay attention to how is the value affected by the information of the project, by its specification, by the country where it's happening, by the culture of people that live in the country. Risk, okay, it's self-standing, but without having an understanding of what the value of a project is, you don't really understand what are the ways in which you can fail to deliver that value. So again, there needs to be a connection. Risk, okay, maybe stakeholders you have looked at into section A. You looked at the list of them, stakeholders, but if you don't analyze the stakeholders against what they could do to prevent risk, it's an incomplete work. Say you identify some risk. Can you do something at the governance level to make sure that that risk is covered? Not only from a risk owner, so somebody that has the responsibility to make sure that that risk doesn't occur, but also maybe a more complex flow of activities that prevent that risk in other ways. Or also, possibly, that react to an event, a risk event, very swiftly so that the consequences are minimized. Not at the very level of the specific risk, but maybe for all of the risks. So the governance profile that you select will have to be adequate to the risk. Now, this might be escaping you right now because that's the topic of our next lecture. Okay, so, but you understand the problem. You understand that there is a pattern of behavior that generally people adopt in a project that will change the way in which risks are managed. So if you look at the profile of the marking scheme, you go. The part A will carry 20% of the marks. Part B, other 20%. Part C, another 20%. Part D, another 20%. And that's where your word count ends, okay? But then you have another 20% that is attributed to how well you justified your decisions with portions from other areas. So how much you took into consideration risk when you were looking at the governance, how much you were looking into value when you were looking at risk, and you know, all of these kind of integration aspects carry 20% of the worth of this assignment. 20% is a lot of marks. It's the difference between a pass and a first. It's a lot of marks. Okay? So don't neglect that. Fine? So this is a general introduction to what we are expecting of you. So you now know you have to produce a document that has a free structure that you can select arbitrarily, that answer those 4 questions and tries to integrate the ideas from one part into the next. So this is an academic piece of work and will require you to reference the materials that you use. Okay? I would generally argue that every document should reference information that they use. So it becomes a better document that can be questioned and analyzed and judged and criticized and improved. Okay, but then sometimes in the professional practice you don't have the time or protecting your intellectual property, so you would not do that. But in this context, we ask you to reference the information that you use. So please don't forget that. If you make a statement that is completely unjustified, I'll tell you, maybe this is right, maybe this is wrong. In any case, it's unreferenced. It's not justified with any sort of evidence. To me, that's just your idea. It could be very weak. So support that with literature, if you find it, or data, if you find it. Okay? Now, this is just the initial coverage, but from now on it's going to be much more interactive. I'll ask you things and you can ask things.
So due to the academic nature of the report, will we have to critically analyse, because that's what I'm trying to think, that's what I've come to realise I have to do with all of my pieces. But as it's a report, how much arguing for and against is going on here?
Yes.
Yeah,
so if we step back a second, what we see is that we are looking into your understanding. So what we'll be marking is not how well this project will be run. What we're marking is how rich an understanding of the topics of risk and value management you have demonstrated. Okay, so your care should be in demonstrating that understanding. In that sense, the proportion of academic reflection could be substantial. However, I must stress that I am interested in that, in applied theories. I don't want a general essay on the benefit of a process against another in the management of value. I want you to be able to select the right value management process as a function of the properties of that project.
But if someone then, if you find information that says that this is not the right function, maybe this is the right function,
You put that in.
okay. So how do you come to a decision on what the right function is then? Do you just decide at some point that this is what I think?
You have to have a justified decision, yes. Could be not, I mean, in your professional life as well, decisions that you take will not be likely 100% supported by evidence, hard evidence. we don't have that luck. In most scenarios, we take decisions based on incomplete information. And you're going to do the same on this project. You're going to balance the different scenarios and see, well, in my perception, this is more appropriate. You know, solution one or theory one is more appropriate than theory two.
The exact decision-making process, the rational decision-making process that we talked about before. Okay, so there's that, but there's other things that may contextually influence your decision, which could be cultural, it could be some heuristic. But you need to evaluate that. But you're the project manager on this, you're making the decisions. Providing you justify your decision.
And say for instance you're arguing there's two different ideas of risk in a certain element of this project. And you, as an inexperienced project manager, I don't actually know which is the best decision to go for. When I'm justifying myself, am I backing that up with literature? Like in the conclusive sentences in text after the academic evidence, is it backed up with literature?
That would be ideal.
Yeah.
So if you might say, I don't have personal experience on this front, so the first thing I would do is to try and capture if there is any data available for me. So do I have an understanding of, so let's say that there is a risk associated with Greenpeace attacking my nuclear plant. How likely is that? I never run a nuclear plant before. Even if I had, I would have little evidence, right? I could probably look into the, I could go on Greenpeace's website and say, well, we did 24 actions last year. Say, yeah, that's great. And then you go and say, okay, how many nuclear plants are there in the world? 500. Good. So 5% of them were attacked by, or in some way put into some, you know, connected with Greenpeace's efforts. 5%. You now have a number, right? So you can, when you have incomplete information, there are two things you can do. Just make a decision based on the limitations that you have of time, maybe because you have to make a decision today. Some other scenarios say, well, I can set in place a method to get more hard data to ground my decision on. Depending on the scenario, one would be reasonable and one would not. But I want to, before I give you the floor again, you still have to realize that we're not interested in the decision. Okay?
How we got there.
But how you got there. So,
justification.
so whatever, we'll not criticize that, you know, we will not go and find alternative data to demonstrate that you were wrong. Our point is that you tried to justify your decision with a rationale behind that.
Like
that's enough for us.
There's no bad decision, it's the outcome. It's the bad thing, that's what we talked about in the lecture. So, but if you justify what you've done at the time, and in the context it was put, then maybe it was the right decision at the, you know, given the information that you got, the justification. So you're not just looking at the World Bank as that's your foundation. This is what you're building your project on. You need to draw from other experiences and other sources to build this portfolio of and value, risk, and
so regardless of whether it's a bad decision or not, what methods, like maybe generic, that can you take or can you go through to find out whether there's more hard evidence or whether to take just the decision based on the scenario at a time? How do you find that out?
How important is that decision for the value of the project?
And obviously that coincides with the fact that we haven't got much time to actually do it.
We know that.
Yeah. So are there any methods that we have to, or is this something that we are supposed to find out?
You are supposed to find out the balance of, you know, if some decision is not crucial, then I'll just go for the information that is available to the team that I have. Otherwise, I'll make sure that I have in the work packages, right, I have deliverable 1, deliverable 2, deliverable 3. And maybe I know that at some point in the future I have a dichotomy. I can either go this way or that way. Sometimes plans are flexible. I have multiple, you know, 2 alternative work packages that depend on some progress. So maybe one of the decisions that you'll have to take is, okay, we know that this is likely to be happening. We have sought hard evidence that this is happening in all the previous projects. And sometimes projects go one way and sometimes they go a different way. So there are maybe 2 different alternative technologies that can be implemented. We don't know yet. We're going to discover next. How do I put it in so it's easier? I'll try to make it a little less general. You have some deliverables, okay? And you probably will be monitoring how well you're doing, right? To make sure that your value is delivered, you'll have some indicators that tell you how well your project is doing, right? You have key performance indicators and things like that. So let's say that at some point you discover that some of your performance indicators have some targets. So the target is going to be, I don't know, 90% of something, and so for activity 1 or the KPI 1, KPI 2, the target is 85. The current is 50 and the current is 70. Okay, baseline.
So
Now, at stage, you have a milestone here. So milestone 1, this is now 52. And this one is 90. Okay? So you find at some point that you have already achieved the target for one of the keystone or the KPIs, and you find that the other one is not improving very much. Okay? You will find that probably your governance needs to react to that. So the way in which you associate budgets with different work packages could reflect the success of how well you're doing in different processes.
So is this where we've got, for example, aspects such as budget, location, nature of stakeholders and kind of benefits? Is that, because you're talking about changing that, basically, is that
what I'm saying is that we were talking about ways in which you make the decision, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you are maybe you don't know whether this is going to happen or not. Maybe they are all going to be progressing fairly, right, or evenly. But if you think that this is also, this could be the case, that things don't happen linearly, you might have processes that rebalance things. And you say, well, I'll make a decision whether I rebalance the funds every 6 months. That's a decision that you take. Only because you see that this is a potential event. So this is one of the risks that you identify, that the proportion of budget is non-appropriate. So the proportion of budget that you apply to different work breakdown structures is wrong.
is that program management? Yeah.
Well, no, that's because these are not different projects. These are different tasks. These are different work breakdown structures. So you already have budgets associated with that, right? So you can rebalance that. We had the discussion that project management and portfolio management can be similar if you apply the same technology to them, right? So your decision will be yes. In this case, I'm confident because I know that these type of projects are linear, that I don't have to have this process of rebalancing the budget in place. But this is a complicated project. It has IT and it has infrastructure. Maybe I'll need to rebalance the budget at some point. Because one can be very volatile and one is crucial. If I don't get that, everything falls down, right?
To me, that is still programming because say if you have infrastructure and IT, they're two different projects. That
Yeah, okay, I made a wrong example. Yes, you're right. That's program, but it doesn't make a difference. Maybe it's not a project. Maybe it's a program that you're managing. That's fine. And indeed, in most cases on the World Bank, you find that they actually manage programs. From that database, you find a lot of programs. But it doesn't matter. If you, that applies to a project as well. My example was a bit too broad.
I'm just trying to understand. Is it just my way of trying to understand?
Are you guys following? Do you know what to do? Yeah. How many of you have completed, you know, a substantial portion of this assignment yet? Like 95%.
I think everybody has.
Yeah, I see somebody down there. Yeah, okay, good. You? Okay, good.
97.
97. Amazing.
Almost there.
Yes. That's great. But you know,
I
have some fun as well. You don't want to work only. 20%? Anybody? Who has completed part A? Part A. Who has started part B? C? No. Okay. But we have a few part A's. So somebody have already started writing down what are the properties of the project. Yeah, what are the qualities. Make sure that you select the ones that you think have an impact on the others. Don't just blubber out, oh, this project is running a lot of information that is useless. Select those bits of information and focus more on those bits of information that will have an impact on the risk, will have an impact on, you know, a stronger impact on the risk, or on the value, or on the governance. So make...
select parts of the project or whatever which will relate to A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
Okay.
B, C, and D.
Does it have to be one project? Could it be multiple projects to back up the information?
No, it could be multiple projects. It could be multiple
similar
projects,
Yeah.
or it could be anything on that you can put your hands on. Okay, any source of academic knowledge, hard data, facts, projects, whatever,
It doesn't have to be a
that
project only.
helps you create the knowledge needed to successfully manage this project. It's very, very welcome. Okay? Reference it properly. So you give us the confidence that you just didn't make up some numbers just to say, this is not a problem. Yeah?
Can you just go through section A, as in how you set it out, and because you have to sort of show the information like details, timescale,
Yes.
background.
So part A. Part A is the only one that doesn't come into flavors. Yeah. So all the other sections, part B, C, and D, you select one of the two tasks and you carry out only one. Part A, no, you only have one question really, which will be lay out for us all the information of the project that you think is useful to make your decisions on part B, C, and D. And I should probably actually just write it down like that next year's iteration, but that's what I want. So this part of the assignment should be comprise all the specifications adopted in the production of the report. This is a fair, probably that's not the best wording ever. It's not all the specification. That would be a substantial amount of work. No, but it's all the information that you think will make a will have an impact in terms of value and risk.
So that
Their purpose is to serve as a repository to support decisions taken in all subsidiaries. So yeah, I kind of improved on that a little. So part A serves as a repository to support decisions taken in all subsequent parts. Focus on that.
not on risk and value, or those in terms of risk and value.
Can you
Focus on these points such as the background environment, client funders, in terms of risk and value, or is it just laying out what aspects of the project are well we need to speak about in B, C and D.
Well, this is the context. This is the foundations. This is putting it into perspective for the reader, and then you start to talk about the impact of the project as it stands and its environment on the value management and risk.
Right. So they're just
I'll make an example.
Standard points though, are they?
These are standard
Just
points, but
generic.
you can put more or remove them as you see fit. So, name, value, time scale of your project. Its background and environment. Okay, I now have a new project that I'm starting in South Korea. Okay, South Korea. It's a very specific type of country. They are a high-tech country. They have high technology. It's a high technology environment. They have broadband everywhere and so on. If I were to run the same project in Ethiopia, it's going to be different. Okay, so if I have I make decisions based on that information. So can I extract information from the background of the project that I think will have an impact on the way in which I carry on the project? Political stability. If you were to run a project in Italy, can you be confident the government is still going to be the same by the end of the project?
So culture, this is exactly what Philip Harvard was talking about, and the cultural context of making decisions. You know, you've got to have some information about where your project is in order to make that decision, whether people will react, whether work ethics, the history behind that.
So say for instance, because he was mentioned about, so for instance in America they're very, something that he said was they sell the future or things, something like that. They are very straightforward with investing on pretty much anything, whereas the French will probably not go down that route of just taking these wild investments. So if you were, so therefore doing a similar project in both of those areas, those two areas, there'd be different in terms of value.
If your project relies on investments, yes, if the investment is already there, that's not an issue for you. You've gone past the investment stage, not a difference. So you have to connect that information to your project.
So for this, for example, a couple of weeks ago we were talking about like an imaginary project, and we said about the weather, depending on what country it is, because that could have an effect on the time that you might need to plan around what season it is, or stuff like that. So is that where that might come into as well, if you say your project's in a certain country?
And is there a risk?
Yeah, that would be part of the risk or risk analysis, right? If you have a risk register that doesn't consider that you might end up without water if you're in Arizona.
Yeah. But where you were saying, when we were talking about that other risk, were we building like hotels in the sea or something like that?
Sorry, can you remember?
That was one of the seminars when we were talking about the hotels when we were doing it next to the sea.
Okay.
Yeah, but with that, obviously, wouldn't have the same risk implications as if it was in Arizona, because we wouldn't need to surround our foundations in, I don't know, waterproof.
Ah, okay, yeah, I remember now. Yes, of course. Yeah, okay. Yes, so that bit of information needs to be, considered with regards to the project. So, your project has an issue with the different location or not? So, if it was, would it be the same project if it was run in a different country or a different environment? So, is that bit of information that you know about the background, the clients, how big an information is, and how you need to rely on that information to make the decisions at the level of the value, level of the risk, level of the governance.
So at the moment they've got the World Cup's going to happen in Qatar, but now they're saying that, you know, they're trying to like withdraw that because of like the heat for everybody.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it was going to be in England, and that obviously the heat factor or the weather conditions wouldn't have been an issue. So that would.
It would have been an issue, but it would
Oh
be
yeah,
different.
yeah. People wouldn't be dehydrated over
Yeah.
here. That's for sure. Like. So.
They'll be hydrated because of the rain. The extreme
Flood
problems.
risk.
So yeah, so there's the risk of it being in Qatar, because obviously it's quite dangerous, I suppose, for humanity.
Okay, no, careful with wording. The risk of being in Qatar, the risk of dehydration as a result of being in Qatar.
Yeah, would be a factor there, but not necessarily a factor in the UK.
Yeah.
Right. And would you kind of use something like that to scenarios if you were doing the project in the world?
No. My point is, don't tell me about the risk of dehydration in the UK. Or possibly focus more on other risks, because you always have the risk of dehydration in any place. So, but it's, I mean, if you're running it in Qatar, it's going to be a major risk. If you're running it in the UK, yeah, okay, somebody will get dehydrated. You'll have somebody handing them the ball. Full stop. In Qatar, you'll have to have prepared
irrigation systems.
whatever. You know, you have to have hospitals ready to receive people that we know are going to be dehydrated in greater numbers. That's my point. Don't focus too much on the risk side, okay? Or on one specific, that level of detail. Focus on what you do at the governance level mostly.
You don't need
Not
every
having it in
risk
Qatar.
covered. You don't need every risk covered in this report. You need to focus on the key risks and give some detail to that, because otherwise you're going to have a risk register that's as long as you.
Okay, you have 5,000 words. 1 second. You have 5,000 words.
If you do that, no, but the risks that you're going to identify.
Don't waste them repeating the same procedure again and again. We need to understand that you understand the principles, okay, and then move to the next section. So it's better for you to go thoroughly through a few items and cover those areas of integration and consideration and looking into the details and ramifications of a problem, rather than listing out 100,000 of them. Because we're not running this project. We're using this project as a test case to demonstrate that you understand value, that you understand risk, that you understand governance. That's the point, okay? So don't, oh, okay, yeah, of course there is that risk. I don't care about how many risks you can find. I care about you understanding that the role of the project manager is to make sure that they understand the environment and they transform that into a good perception of risk. And they not only consider the specific risk, but they consider the risk at the governance level as well. So risk for a project manager is not only, oh, people are going to be dehydrated, but also money is not going to be available to do something. So don't look at the whole thing or at a very detailed level. Look at it from holistically. Yes? Yeah? Yes?
For the part A bit as well, we have to access, we can use the World Bank to get a project, and then we can use that as a structure.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that this part, all the stuff that you've done prior to this part is all the work, the World Bank stuff, so the preparation part won't be in part A at all. This is all about your project that you're doing.
You can reference a lot from the World Bank. You can reuse the same information basically.
But are you coming from the point of this is my project, and you're not letting the reader know that the information came from the World Bank?
No. Reference everything.
You can reference.
Reference. No, you must reference. Yes.
Are we going to evaluate the decisions of the project from the World Bank's point of view?
So you can criticize their decisions and take a different one, yes. So, but not at the level of decision making, at the level of value, for instance, at the level of risk, yes, of course. So you can say,
this project for Broadbank, it's an organization.
so you can say they decided to use a governance method that will require the funders to get together every month to define whether the project will go on or not. I think that's a mistake because such and such. So the new project will be run in a different methodology.
But we don't discuss, we don't evaluate the actual decision of implementing this project from World Bank's point of view.
No,
We
no,
just take it as a given.
that's a given. Yeah.
Not I think.
I might have misunderstood the question.
No, she's right. No, you're right. I'm saying not I think. It's not written in the first place.
Ah, yeah. Okay. So
Sorry,
you
can I
want to
just make
come here and make the
can I
point
just make
in
this-
front of the camera?
Let's make this really, really
Famous
clear.
now.
I personally do not want to see this report written in the first person. This is a professional report. It does have some academic input, a lot of academic input. I do not want, I think this and I believe that. This is factual. It will be, this is, okay?
So a decision is
No.
been taken to, rather than I
think
decided to.
I've decided
Well,
to.
it is suggested that kind of thing.
The suggestion, yeah, that sort of thing, but yeah. But not I, we, they,
It should be third person, really.
third person. But you know I'm a stickler for that. You've had to write reports for me before. Okay? It may be a given, but I know that some people have, I don't want any confusion here. I want a level playing field.
There's nothing, not about us. Our opinion does not matter, basically, is what you're saying.
Well, you've made a decision on the, yes, you have, you have an opinion, you've made that decision, but you're making it explicit. Okay, right, I haven't, but evidence has suggested that this is a decision to be made. So it's not something I thought or felt.
Yeah, the point I think is that we're not
Okay.
interested in your emotional side.
I'm not interested. This is, yeah.
You kind of agree with other people's opinions in this fact. You can't
Yeah,
have
so,
your own
so it
opinion.
is an agreed perception from other, that's been informed from other people, from other evidence. Okay.
You have
So
a
this will
question?
make it a more.
So we have to choose a topic from World Bank, a closed topic, and follow exactly like it was, or we can transfer it.
No, you can transfer it,
No,
and
the idea is to transfer it to your new project. So this is
So
a
it's not an
advantage.
imaginary project.
it's an imaginary project. It relies on the World Bank project so that it can be a realistic project.
So we're
So-
creating a project.
You are creating a project, so what I ask here is that the easiest way to produce the specification of the new project is to clone portions of the spec from the World Bank database and amend them as needed for a new project to be started at the beginning of next year. Yeah? So you start from a project that has solid and realistic foundations, and you can change it to make it more interesting for you, for your background, for your interests.
And we can change also, for example, the location.
Anything. So, for example, aspects such as the available budget, location of the project, the nature of the stakeholders, and even the intended benefits can be changed.
And this is all with all in aid of maybe creating better value for this imaginary project that you see fit based on literature that you have read.
I think these changes would be actually to make it more suitable for your learning experience. So,
So
if
you're
you
not
need to,
changing it to, prevent, this.
we are not interested in the project. The project we know is not going to be happening. So, the project has zero value for us. What we care of is the project as a mean to demonstrate that you rock in risk and value management. Okay? Forget the project. Forget the detail level of the project. That's just the
So we
for you to demonstrate that you not only understand the theoretical aspects of risk and value management, but you can apply them to a specific case.
And once we've got that, we take the lectures that we've been through you, which are the skills on the topic risk and value, and we try and apply as many lectures to that imaginary project.
Yeah.
Right.
Should we create a scenario for our
Sorry,
imaginary
one second,
project?
there is a question from there.
Say, like, there is not enough information about the execution process, like the decisions made.
Yeah.
Can we make some assumptions based on the previous mass housing projects that occurred, such risks has occurred, so it is probable that this will occur,
Yeah.
because my project's a closer one, but
I think that's what you were saying before, is that you can draw upon as many projects as you like to inform the decisions that you're going to make. Okay.
But if you assume like this, like something has happened before in a life, professional experience and so on, so how do you reference that?
You do. There are always ways of referencing information. If you recite them right, you will find the way.
It could be an email, it could be...
Like,
you can just...
On a lot of websites you find this information, so you use that way.
Yeah.
See, well, I've been told that because there's information on websites, there's reports that you can write, that you can read, but I'm always told to back it up with academic literature. So say if I find something on YouTube which I think is definitely very insightful, but isn't trying to tell me anything, it's just like good information, does that qualify as a good reference? Once I've referenced that, is that a good source of information? Or do I then have to go and find academic literature to back that video up?
For me, it would be. But I need to read I need to watch a video. I will not be...
Put the link on there. Put 10 links.
as long as you reference it, you're taking you're making the decision that that is a valid reference. Of course, you can find valid references everywhere.
But yeah, it's only because in other lectures we're told that academic literature is the be all and end.
If you do your dissertation, yes, it is more or less the be all and end all. But in this, this is applied.
This is applied. So any information is better than no information.
But you've got to make the decision as to your master's degree students. You can make that decision as to whether it's referable
or not, and we will be judging that.
So you can reference videos, you can reference the Bible, you can reference anything you like. It tells you inside them right on how to reference and cite them properly. But you have to make the decision as to whether that's a referable piece and it's justifiable and has a place in your assignment.
So the only way you're going to know that whether that has a place is whether we because you're not going to read everyone's references. But
we'll know quite a few of them.
Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, you're only going to know whether the way that we've actually tried to justify it. I'm assuming that's the way that's where you're looking for the substance of whether you've got the point or not.
Look, if I think something is weak, I'll spend time to investigate.
Do you think your justification is weak? Based on the evidence that you've given through a citation, then we will investigate to see whether the source.
When you're overthinking. You're like here.
You're analysing everything. This is the problem.
But isn't this is what we're here to do?
No, you're here to think, not to overthink.
What is the
You're here to think.
Oh,
you're here to consider.
By the end of the video, go crazy. That's the problem.
I have your problem exactly. Don't worry, you're not alone in this.
So
But just stop it.
how do I deal with this problem that I obviously have?
Live your life. That's the only chance. Live your life. Well, this is good advice. It is. Take your chances.
I'm going out tonight.
You should, of course. Take your chances. You think that something is worth proposing, you haven't found anything better, you use that. That's fine. That's normal. That's life. In your professional life, you'll be making much worse decisions, trust me. And the world will still, the sun will still rise the day after. Absolutely. Sorry, I know, yeah.
Due to the project being imaginary,
yeah,
do we have to create some sort of a scenario?
Well, we have the scenario. We are describing the scenario.
This at the beginning is all about putting into context.
Specifications.
It's not just cut and paste from the World Bank. This is a project. This is it.
So once you define who the stakeholders are, what the place is, and then you have the scenario, right?
Yeah.
Don't make it. It's not a piece of fiction. Okay, we're not interested in you overcomplicating it or making it beautiful or anything like that. It just needs to be a piece of practical environment so that you can say yes. Theories say that value management can be done this way, that way, that way, that way. In this case, because it's in India, I'm using that way. In this case, because it's IT, I'm using that way. In this case, because it's, you know, eventually, you know, it's very simple.
Yes.
You have alternative, you make a decision because of some information. That's it. It's very simple.
So you have to consider the external factors that are affecting the project.
And the internal, I mean, you have to
Internal,
consider
external,
internal
geographical
factors, geographic, environment, stakeholders. You had a question?
Yeah,
As long as it's a similar project.
I think the most
They have to be
difficult thing
like
is
why they have to be similar?
how are we going to choose the budget for an imaginary project?
Well, the budget is, in a sense, the least interesting aspect for me. Because, you know, budget become real when things become real. Yeah?
That's what
So we are not running this project. So I am more interested in you preventing, you know, setting up a governance that will make sensible use of budgets. Being maybe reactive to budget issues. Optimizing for value, which means really mining the functions that are interesting as opposed to the functions that are just waste of money. But you know, I will never go and criticize the fact that you misallocated some proportion of the budget there. Not interested.
Yes, your point was, can I take all different types of projects
Yeah, that
and
was
put
it.
them all into, one?
You say get a project from World Bank, but realistically, there's you know, we're creating our own project. So I would say I'm going to get like 10 projects, take various issues from these projects, put them together so they look like it is actually what it's going to work, right? And then address this.
And then I said to you, well, they have to be simple projects, otherwise.
Yeah, but why? Because if you've got, just trying to think, building. Like we were talking about earlier with the football stadium in Qatar and in England, they're totally different. Nations. So.
But the same it's still building a football stadium. It's a different context.
But
you couldn't say, all right, I'm building a football stadium here, and then I'm going to look at an IT project here. That's what I'm saying. Diversity in your projects.
You might be able to take something from how they governed the IT project, though.
No, absolutely. But at some point you have to sleep. That's the only point.
Yes.
Okay, I'll say goodbye to that.
I'm starting to be worried, honestly.
I am worried.
You should. I mean, sorry, but I must say this. It's just an assignment. No, it's not.
It's going to affect Christmas.
No.
Now you put the date out. But
It's not going to affect your life by this much. I mean, no. Wait a second. This is mathematics, okay? The amount of things in your life that are going to be affected by this today seem a lot. In 2 years' time, they will be zero. Okay. You are getting there. Time will go by anyway, even if you sleep, right? So you are overthinking this by a fat margin. So relax, do your work, you'll be okay.
So as long as the projects are within the same context, like if you're building a stadium in one country and you're using sustainability in another country, you could use these two projects. But as long as it's not totally different kind of...
You know, but he was right when he said that, you know, there is a bit of learning that I can take from an IT governance
and implement it in
okay. So you have to look at the scope of that. So so the context for a bit of information. Does that context apply the same there? Are they similar contexts?
Can
it be used?
But you have to have
you
one
will
solid
use it.
project.
Yeah, I know, but you can
focus. But you can draw upon other. You can draw upon other industries as you would when you're doing your dissertation. You look beyond your field of knowledge to inform possibly best practices in another industry potentially. But like Claudia says, just you don't have to do that. You're making a lot of work for yourself.
It would sound like that would be a lot of work, to be honest.
So I'll make an example. We'll see next week how governance is affected by the industry that you're in. Okay. So the governance of construction and infrastructure is very much mandated. The information that you have at the beginning of the project is very likely to stay the same for the whole duration of the project. So typically you will go and do a very long waterfall system. So you know between this point and this point, it's a 10-year process, right? And you can still rely that after 10 years, cars will have 4 wheels, right? So you can rely on the environment to stay the same. Now, in an IT project, if you were to rely on things to stay the same for 10 years, you will be screwed, big time, because 2 years on, everything is changing around you, okay? So you cannot have the same type of calm and paced behavior for the whole 10 years. So this has produced a different IT governance for IT projects, a different project governance for IT projects. Now, that applies very well to projects that are, to problems that are creative. Yeah. So if you say, well, even if I'm running an infrastructure project, if I'm looking into designing something, that is a creative process. So if I have a specific task that is a creative task, I can use for that bit the governance that comes from the IT industry.
Like if you wanted to put interactive TVs in the building throughout.
No. When I'm talking about governance, I'm talking about the processes that oversee the behavior of people. What people can do, what they are asked to do, the way in which you are supposed to communicate to each other, that's the governance. We'll cover that much more, we'll have 2 hours of that next week, so I cannot hope to cover that in 5 minutes now. But for that specific bit of your project, you could say this is all a project that is very closely governed with milestones every 6 weeks or 6 months, and you have budget reallocation every such and such. With this creative bit, well, that's going to be out of that scheme. For that, we are going to have a completely different way of managing people and money and so on. Because we know that if we do that, we're going to get more juice, more value out of that. So you realize that this is creating an environment and it works. That is generally not a creative environment, so I cannot apply to the whole integrity of it, but I can apply it to the selectively creative parts of that. So that's when I'm saying keep, analyze the scope and the area in which some learning point that you made is applicable. Okay? And just do it. Just do it. Sit down, you write it. Relax, it's going to be fine. I mean, the Gaussian curve, right? You all know the Gaussian distribution? Yes?
Monte Carlo.
That's not only Monte Carlo, that applies to a number of things, but yes, in Monte Carlo simulation, that is what you get. Gaussian distribution you see in all sorts of complex measurements. us marking you reflects, well, is depending on how much you studied, your previous knowledge to some extent, your commitment, how well we explain things, and so on. All these factors make it the perfect scenario, the complex scenario that will that will produce an outcome like that. If I plot your marks on a scale, they will look like that. There will be somebody that doesn't do very well. So these are the 40s, fail. There will be a few, not in this class of course. There will be a few 50s. There will be a few 60s. There will be a few 70s. There will be a few 80s. Yeah? See how to read this? You know how to read this? This is how many 40s, this is how many 50s, this is how many 60s, this is how many 70s, this is how many 80s. Right, so you're very likely to fall there. Don't overthink. Whatever you do, you're very likely to fall there.
Whatever you do.
That's very important.
That's nice.
That's
Not very encouraging.
Whatever you do, you get 65. Not bad.
That's the prior probability. Okay? That's an important fact. The prior probability, if you behave on average, you get an average. Which is not I mean, the prior probability in this case is to get about a 65. The mean is going to be there, right? So don't be overstressed. If you take away that stress, your prior probability grows.
So we're going, if you do something 75.
So do it relaxed, it's going to be nice. So my point is, don't stress, just do what you're asked you to do, it's going to be fine.
Can I ask something? If we take, for example, a project about tourism near the sea, but we can translate it to a project about tourism in the mountains, can we do this?
Yeah.
You know, to get some advice for this and
So, I mean, tasks will change, but the way in which you manage a project,
it will be the same.
it's going to be the same. You're going to have a team, you're going to have a set of things, you will have to be the marketing, you'll have to have the, all the different areas. Yeah, of course. Now, of course, if I have to produce a brochure that has a picture of the sea and a picture of a mountain, it's not going to affect the way in which I manage the project, right? No problem. Of course, some things will change. If I have to build a nuclear power plant near the sea and a nuclear power plant on the mountains, that's a different issue. So some aspects will change and some aspects will stay the same. So you look at the World Bank and you say what they did. They did A, B, C, D, E. Beautiful. Will this change? Yeah, probably I'll change that. I will keep B, I will change C, I will keep D, I will keep E, right? So it's actually, this is very important, and I mean that if you demonstrate that by changing some aspect, you recognize that some things stay the same and some things change, that's a very interesting way of presenting your work. A few last words on presentation. We are asking you to produce a report that, so forget that now, marks are gone, don't have any marks now, we are now starting afresh. But anyway, that's your page, title, your personal thing, section A. You start writing out all the information on that. Section A is going to be very plain, yeah, you're just presenting the information that you're.
Just 1 second. Do we do before we hit section A? Do we have to do like you would in something else where you'd introduce the piece that you're?
No, we know what we ask you to do.
So we don't need to like introduce it and do an introduction or anything. Just
Content
straight.
page? Content page?
If you like. See, you're overthinking.
Stop. Context page would be good. It helps us navigate. And if you could section it in, either reference it in A or 1.0 as you would a document, and numbered.
So, mind you though, I'll be reading this digitally. So I won't print any of this out. Everything's going to be on a screen for me. So if you want to organize the page horizontally, go ahead, don't worry. I mean, make your choice, doesn't matter. So, that's going to be fairly linear. I mean, you're just presenting information. If you think that you're going to use some particular bits of information and they will have an impact on the governance, you can have at the side that says used in section D or decision making. Would it help? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, you can. My point is that you can try and start to create a document that helps us give you all the marks that you deserve. Right? So we are asking for 4 things, actually 5 things, to produce a presentation, risk, value, risk, and governance and decision making, and there is that 20% of integration. Right? Something like that would highlight where integration happens. Right? So making it a meta document would actually be interesting. That takes a little challenge, but it's a good exercise for you to try and produce a document that is easy to read.
Link.
Interconnected, right? See page 25, see section 3B. You see how, this is making a good presentation is always a good thing. And that doesn't only apply, I mean, makes our life as markers help easier, but that applies to any environment. If you are a project manager and produce bad documents, people will not read them. Will have troubles understanding them when they read them. Will miss some correlations that you think are important. Highlight them with color. We have so much technology available that it would be a shame not to use some of that. So the power of producing rich documents.
If we find projects or project that had the governance of the project successfully implemented, how do we apply the theory to that? Because it's already been done properly to 100%.
Ah, well, you see, that was, I mean, you can actually just say, that was successful, so I'm using the same governance.
Or should you not find one?
But if you say, well, but my argument would be, wait a second, you learn from one project and you think that's solid enough information?
So you need to find a few projects that have the same sort of problem success in this particular area, and then you class that as success.
Well, the full academic method, the full scientific method would be double blind and would be proving something and proving all the possible consequences. So you say, I have governance A. Whatever governance it is, we call it governance A. So you would have to say, like, governance A was used in projects 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the result of these projects in terms of quality is on average 90%, whatever measure you make. And say, okay, so I like that.
That's success, yeah?
90% success. So you can say, I'll use the same, because I like 90%. But the scientific method would be governance, to compare it with the method of governance B of projects 6, 7, and 8 that actually delivers 75. So at this point you can say, yes, A is better than B to some extent. Because then there is a whole matter of evaluating what...
So you need a comparison.
You know, if you're not comparing, you cannot really just say, yeah, that's good. Well, that's because something, but you don't know whether there is a method C that takes that was run on projects 9 and 10 that actually had 100%. Because I would argue if that's the case, then
so you have to prove it.
You have to
compare. Because you could have come to that conclusion by reading, having a broad research and not actually
looking at projects.
showing the unsuccessful ones, but you've come to this conclusion because you've read around the subject.
I mean, this would be the scientific method, okay? Having evidence to support you.
Comparing it.
But there are other methods. There are methods of relying on authoritative sources. So you say, in general infrastructure projects, I read that Dallas tells me that, Dallas 2010 tells me that, such and such. So you can rely. That's why we call in academic references, right? Because we can rely on them to have done the basic work for us. So before they say that, they must have run something like this. They generally haven't.
Therefore, we need to compare.
No. You can, if a piece of academic culture tells you something, unless there is an evident piece of academic culture that tells you otherwise, you can rely on that.
Part C, question C2. C1's more like you have to identify this, and this. But C2 says define and present the risk management strategy that you as a project manager would place. So how would you present that? When it says present, do you just mean just generally points that you, or are you using maybe a time scale of from this imaginary date to this imaginary date?
Or the risk register which you were talking about over there.
So you would say, well, for this type of project, I will have a risk register. And risk registers are good because such and such, and in the risk register, I will attach to some sort of behaviors of risk owners, some sort of behaviors of the project manager. And I think this is justified by this piece of evidence that I found, and so on. So you're not creating a risk register. You are telling us that the risk register is the right tool for this project. Okay.
It's a management of that risk. It's a management strategy.
So this is more similar to a risk register. C1 starts from the stakeholders and looks at the positive and negative impacts of these. So in a sense, it's a stakeholder-based risk register. This one gives you the freedom to say risk register would not be adequate in this environment. Or maybe not enough. Maybe you do a risk register plus something. All right? Do you know what to do?
No. Yes.
Start again.
Now, before I let you go, do we have a few minutes yet still? Few minutes. I'll spend some time to clear this whiteboard, so that there is only one important. Clear very well. You know I like charts of all sorts. January, December, November, October, September. This is where we met. It was a beautiful day, remember? This is the deadline, 6th of January. Is that where we are? Really? Wow.
We only got it.
Oh, come on. I knew it was you. Somebody always say that, and I knew it was you. Your targets. Your KPIs. What do I plot here? January the 6th. What do we want to have by then?
It's the same complete
More stress.
and stress-free.
Yeah, more or less.
First.
No, I mean that's a no. See, that's a different. No. That happens later. That happens that after the marking process. Yeah, that's a benefit that you get from the law, but your deliverable. Yeah, difference there. Okay, so there you go. We're now here, and so we started in September, right? Is that the right way to put this? Probably not. Probably. So I don't think you have 3,500 words already, right? Some of you might. No, that's unrealistic, okay? But something like this was realistic because I told you, you have to select the project from the World Bank. So some of you might have already started writing something about that project. So let's say, okay, I'll make it wrong and then I'll fix it. This more realistic? Yeah. It's kind of, yeah, potential. But what we know is that projects actually go like this. They start slowly, then they ramp up, and then they slow down again, right? So, you're not doing terribly bad. Okay? We are here. You should be about 1,000. Let's say 1,000 words. Alright? That's not difficult to do because part A is just data. You just go, select and put it there. And that's probably 1,000 words if it's not more. Right? So yeah, it's easy to get done. The problem you're having is that that's an easy 1,000 words. Right now, you're facing this point here, which is where you have to be fast. That, it's steep there. You've done all your thinking, and slowly starting up. So you should be fast now for the next few weeks. And then you can slow down. Okay? Why do we slow down at the end of the project? You know that?
Is that when you look over what you've got and you see if you can better it? Or
exactly, because really this is perceived completion, right? So you know that at some point getting an improvement on anything is more difficult than it was when it was not there in the first place. So it's easy for me to create some infrastructure, but making beautiful takes more time, right? So I will slow down. One way of So do a lot of work soon, and then take your time to sleep over it and read it again and criticize it with a cold mind, cold blood, yeah? After some time. My suggestion would be not to go for a pattern like that. My suggestion would go to a pattern like that. Right? So what you do is you work a lot, you write more than you need, and then you start taking away all those bits that you don't like. Those are the weak parts of your work. And if you look at it a little at perception and psychology of marking, you will find that I will generally start from you very high. I'll think, okay, let's see, this is another bit of work, it's going to be excellent. Then you open and say, the title sucks. From the title. And then, your perception is going to be, boom, 20. Wrong title. Then you read something and you say, okay, no, yeah, it's done something right, it's okay, it's a 60. It's a 60. And then you go, some other thing. These are going to fail. I promise I'm going to fail you. Whatever you do, from now on I'm going to fail. And then you find some other nice bits. And you go, yeah, okay, it's there. So it's going to be like a curve that goes, and progressively, it overshoots in a couple of directions.
So with this method, you eliminate the weak points.
So if you take away those parts, they will take me really down there. You know, I'm going to fluctuate much here. So you take away the bad parts. Take away, you know where the bad parts are. If you write more, you can take them away. Still have a solid work that doesn't, you know, seem like it done on the day before. and you took away all the bad parts. So I never have that feeling of, oh, this is really bad. And then all of a sudden your work skyrockets. Okay? Thank you very much for being here today. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next week.
Right. I'm not saying. No, I mean, right.